Good evening, and welcome to the Weekly Narrative Saturday Night Edition. I'm your host, Jeremy. To my right, you'll see my co-host, Delaney, aka the young,
What's up, folks?
degenerate lesbian, who is not as degenerate as the rest of the lesbians, thankfully, but bringing you
Play on words, folks. Play on words.
your weekly dose of truth, reality, and alt-centrist perspectives with a pretty interesting lineup tonight of various studies, polls, surveys, data, because we love science here at the Weekly Narrative, and we like to interpret reality as close as possible. So we have an array of, as I mentioned, studies. We got one study that we're going to be talking about that looked at, this is a poll actually, looked at how Democrats are twice as likely as Republicans to end friendships over political disagreements. It's going to be interesting.
What?
We have a study that was actually withdrawn due to death threats that was talking about the economic efficacy of colonialism. Somebody would try to make an argument for colonialism through a study using science, and they received death threats for the very insinuation that colonialism may economically benefit some of the colonialized countries or regions. So that's interesting. We're going to take a look at that. We got another race hoax we're going to talk about. We got I'm going to revisit the Uber story from last week. I got a slightly different take on that now that I've gotten some more information. And we got one of the big studies of the night that we're going to be talking about is from the CDC themselves, because we know the CDC is very reputable. We love everything that they produce here, and we definitely abide by everything that they say. We have a study in the increase in teen female suicide over the last couple of years. It's alarming, to say the least. We'll take a look at that and what the bigger picture is behind that. Maybe try to figure out some reasons why. We got a couple other stories relating to COVID. We're going to be looking at why Merck would attack the efficacy of one of its own drugs in order to maybe prop up one of its new drugs that has got coming out. We'll look at some of the incentives behind that, because we'd like to talk about incentives here, because incentives, as I say, will always help you understand reality. If you understand the incentives, you will understand reality. And then to wrap everything up at the end, we've got a study relating to COVID again that shows that there is pretty much, and this is the study saying it, not me, that there's really no point in vaccinating people who've already had COVID. So,
okay.
Yep, I think that's going to be really interesting. And what's up? We got Dave in chat. I see Osis in chat. I think I saw somebody else in chat. But my chat cleared itself already. We already got stereo chats coming in, so you know what that means. Let's run the intro, and let's get started. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me, Jeremy. Let's fire it up.
Let's do it. I don't like Susan that much, but hey, you know what? I do like Dr. Pepper. This stream is brought to you by Dr. Pepper with cream soda, 0 sugar. Remember, folks, don't drink calories unless it's alcohol. Cheers.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Here.
Let's jump over. We got the stereo chat that came in already. We got 5 million people in the stereo listening already. I think we're already bigger than Rush Limbaugh. Let's see what Paul's going to warm us up with.
You've been speaking for over a minute on stereo, and I don't see it on YouTube yet. Check your stream.
Stream, I think, is running on YouTube. Get your act together, man. Well, it says we got 4 watching on YouTube. So Susan could be messing with us.
Is it the audio? Could it be the audio? I don't know.
No, audio looks good. I don't know. Can we get confirmation in the YouTube chat that everything appears to be running fine? Because it does look like Osis is in there. Dave is in there as well. It was running for me when I popped it up.
Nobody said anything.
Yep, I think we're good. I think he's just spreading some FUD there on the stream.
I think he just wants to see us so bad that it's just like stereos going and YouTube. Sometimes it takes YouTube a few minutes for YouTube to catch up and like let people know that we're live on there.
Yeah.
That happens to me too.
It's true. It's true. It looks like it's running okay for me. So let's not jinx it, and let's continue on to our first story of the night, which is actually not even one that I mentioned in the intro, but this is a little. I want to revisit California since I've left. It's been about a month since I left California, and it's very interesting. I got to say, looking at California from the outside now, having lived in the capital of California for about 3-4 years. You kind of lose perspective, especially when you live in other areas. You know how things really are in the real world. Once you're outside, you look back in, you see wild, crazy stuff like this from the Atlantic. We're going to be looking at California's growing drought disaster. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Oh, Jeremy, this isn't related to politics. Actually, it's directly related to politics. Yes, and this is kind of this is a precursor, I would say, a omen, not a good omen either, for the coming fire season in California and what California plans on doing with that. I did just read an article from, I think it was PG&E a couple days ago that said because of the drought and the heat, the fire season has accelerated in the time, so they're expecting it earlier than regular, and last year was pretty bad, so this is even drier. But anyway,
and instead of like spending the winter time clearing out the forests and doing what they should have done, PG&E just did nothing.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's really no forest management in any substantial capacity happening in California. But what I wanted to do with this story, I didn't want to read anything. I really just wanted to show you guys some pictures of what California looks like right now, because in case you're not aware, there's no water in California. Any water that's in California is a reservoir that's water that's been stored or imported from somewhere else, because you're not supposed to live in California. Okay, there's no way you can live in California without artificial means, which are dams, reservoirs, things like that. So what you're looking at here, for example, is Oroville, Lake Oroville, which is right outside Sacramento. And you can see the water level on this. I think they're facing 50-year lows or something like that. Water levels on this stuff. It's a visually jarring pictures, and I just wanted to go through a couple of these.
I've been on Lake Oroville personally. The water is not supposed to be that low. Like normally the water is pretty freaking dang high. Like that bridge, I've crossed over that bridge. Normally the water is it's supposed to be close to that bridge, but
yeah,
nope,
well, you can see
not lately.
The tree line in the picture is really not that much below the bridge itself, but now you're looking at probably I would say at least a 70 to 80 foot drop in the water level. And yeah, it's at 37% capacity. Okay, so what does this mean for this residents of Northern California? That's the question. You're going to run out of water, Delaney. That's what it means.
Yep, stock up on water, folks, if you're in California.
I think this picture really encapsulates California perfectly. California in a nutshell. So what you're looking at here, for those of you on the audio version, we're looking at a picture of a house that's been burned down. There's nothing left but the foundation and a chimney, and all the trees around it are black. They're burnt to a crisp. And in the background is a presumably Lake Oroville, and it is incredibly low in the water level. So you're seeing both the effects of the drought in the water level, but also the fires in the destroyed homes. And, this all ties directly back to how California and their government chooses to manage these things. So I haven't been in California long enough to understand the politics behind the water stuff. There's probably a bunch of other people that can more accurately describe that situation, and if you have any insight on that, feel free to drop a stereo chat or comment in the YouTube. Delaney, you probably have better insight, but basically, as far as we know, California has been negligent in their management of the forests, cleaning up the forests, and maintaining these reservoirs. Now, we just saw, I think, was it Oroville Dam broke a couple years back?
Yeah, it was like it had a big crack in it, and it was like during a big storm, and the storm was so bad that the storm was so bad and the rain and everything, they thought it was going to like break and burst. So we had to call in the California National Guard to evacuate the city of Yuba and
Mm-hmm.
like evacuate all the surrounding areas because they thought it was going to burst and like flood the entire city below it.
Stalking Horse in the YouTube chat asks, "Are they working on the damaged spillway?" I think that's what I'm referring to is the Oroville spillway. And there's
Yeah, the
dramatic,
Ore Dam, yeah.
yeah, there's dramatic footage of that online. If you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend checking that out. Google, or I'm sorry, DuckDuckGo, duck the Oroville spillway failure, and you can see this thing just collapsing as water is rushing down it. It's pretty crazy. But anyway, these pictures, it goes beyond the forest and the water as well, because there's a picture on the screen right now of probably about 50 or so almond trees. I believe these are almond trees. Yeah, almond
Yep.
trees that have been removed. They're all dried to a crisp, and these farmers are saying that they cannot farm almonds anymore because there's a water shortage. Now, if you haven't driven through California, you don't know this, but outside of every major city in California, everything as far as the eye can see is all orchards and farms.
Yep.
This is where all the food comes from. Especially nuts, is California. It is an astronomical
Yes.
amount of trees and farms in California, and these are the people who are going to be suffering the circumstances of these water shortages. So, just be aware. One of the reasons why I chose not to stay in
I was gonna
California.
say, if you're wondering why your nut prices have gone up, it's because of this. Because the yield has been very, very low over the last, like, I don't know, 5 to 10 years when it comes to the almonds and the pistachios and the everything. It's just because of the water. The water situation has been bad.
Yeah, it's add on top of that the fact that fires are going to start burning that all down. I literally, as I was leaving California, I had to drive through a fire, and so I got one last smell of that burning feces scent. That just to burn the smell of California in my mind as I was leaving. It was really great. That's what it smells like. It smells like burning, like cow feces. And it's pretty terrible. Let's see.
Oh yeah, it's awful.
We got Dr. Nabisco in stereo. Let's see what he's got to say.
California is the perfect example of what happens to an area when it becomes multicultural. I mean, most people, when they think multicultural, they see a Japanese restaurant sitting next to an Italian restaurant that's sitting next to, I don't know, an Indian restaurant. And that's all people think about. They think that's an amazing thing. But they don't realize that, with collectivizing people from different parts of the world into one area, you're not just bringing the positives of those
Bringing the
different cultures,
negatives.
you're also bringing the negatives. And you're making your area, your country, your community, whatever, you're making your area a microcosm of the world. And the world is a hostile place. Therefore, your area is going to be a hostile place. Multiculturalism is chaos. Homogeny is homeostasis.
Man, I like this guy, Nabisco. You need to subscribe
I
immediately.
know. Absolutely. Hit the follow on stereo, and also check us out on youtube.com/weekly narrative. We go live there so you can get a good view of us.
Yeah, no, I think you're correct, but I think there's something more to it. And I didn't realize this. This is one of the reasons why I like moving around. I like exploring different parts of the country, because when I moved to Houston, Houston has, I would argue that Houston is even potentially more diverse than places like Sacramento or even San Francisco. The diversity is insane here, but it's not nearly the same environment socially, because people they just don't really care as much about all this stuff. So it's almost like the diversity is definitely a large contributor to these problems that we're seeing, but I don't think it's the single contributor. There's other things to it, because we have other models, like I would point to Houston as an example, where it works better. I'm not saying it's perfect. Nowhere's perfect, but it's way. I mean, I could go to any, it's exactly what he mentions, any kind of restaurant, food, people, the colors, as far as people go, they're very diverse here in Houston, but it's not as contentious. It's not economically self-destructive. So there's something else to it, but we're definitely on to something with the multiculturalism for sure. Synergy in chat says, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's the multiculturalism, and I also think that it's just piss poor management from the government entities. I mean, it's really what it boils down to, because I remember when I was a kid, our forest management was not as crappy as it is now. And nowadays it seems like they can't do their jobs. Like the conservation groups, like the guys who go in and cut down the trees and like do the deforestation and clear out all the brush, it seems like they tie their hands and don't allow them to do their jobs anymore, because all these people are just like, no, don't do it. I was like, no, we need to do this. Like, if we don't want to have bad forest fires this upcoming year, we need to like clear out some of this forest.
The only time we ever do forest management is when we use our prison population as slave labor under Kamala Harris and send them out there. It seems like that's the only time we ever do forest management.
Pay them 30 cents an hour to go out there and chop down trees and like fight fires when they happen.
Right. Synergy in the chat says Houston has a huge amount of blacks, Asians, Indians. Yes, no, that's correct. And it's one of the most multicultural places I've ever seen. And I've heard from multiple people here that they acknowledge it's multicultural, but they also acknowledge that alone is not enough to cause the chaos that comes as a result of places like California. So there's a leadership aspect involved that also creates that destruction, I think. And policies, of course, because you can direct the priorities of the state to go towards destructive things or productive things. We got a comment from Osis in stereo.
So this is very far from my area of expertise, but I can tell you this from my experience and knowing the politics and all that. We get our water from the Hetch Hetchy Reservoir system, and that was put in 1908. And as far as I know, we haven't put any new water gathering or reservoir type apparatus in the state probably like 40 or 50 years.
Yep.
Nothing substantial for sure. And as you know, we are an agricultural state. Some of the best produce comes from California, and those guys have been getting hosed for years. They're digging wells deeper and deeper. So California is getting basically the water from Hetch Hetchy. All that goes down I-5, it goes to Southern California. They're getting all the water because it's a desert.
Yeah, that's what I was about to bring up too, as far as like our water management. It seems like up here in Northern California, we have so many different lakes and reservoirs and capacity to store water. And what do? We send it all down to Southern California, where they have no lakes, they have no rivers, like no natural flowing rivers like we do up here.
Yep.
So it's a lot of that. We're sending all of our freaking water down to them. It's like, no, build your own damn reservoirs, bitch. It's my water.
That's one perspective to it. I think one of the things that was fascinating about leaving California is when you're driving through the main highways and you're going through all these farmlands, you see signs in every farmer's field on the sides of freeways that say like vote Trump, vote for these water laws, whatever. All these signs are about water management because these farms cannot keep producing this stuff, and there's a clear lack of support in those areas. But the people who are voting, the predominant voter banks, people in LA, San Francisco, Sacramento, San Diego, they never see that stuff. They never see the farmlands. They don't drive through Sacramento. They don't understand what's happening in the rest of their state. All they see is, the people taking dump on the sidewalk outside their window, and they don't understand what's actually happening in their state. So they don't get the attention they deserve. The voter base is completely off of priority when it comes to that. And then it's obvious by the fact that they haven't created any new reservoirs in 50 years, that they have no idea what kind of problems are lurking underneath.
Yeah, and then when it comes to actually going out and voting, the California voters don't even actually read what's on their ballot, both on the state and the local. So we vote in stupid projects that cost us billions of dollars that actually don't do anything, like AKA the bullet train.
Yep, somebody in chat just mentioned the bullet train. Stalking Horse says there's signs that say F the bullet train.
I agree. F the bullet train. I'm sorry. Like I voted no for that because that's stupid. Like if if the people who wanted this bullet train so badly, pay for it your damn self, because it was like all of these rich politicians that wanted it. Pay for it your damn self. Use your own freaking salary for that stuff. Don't use California funds. Like stop it.
Well said. We got another comment from Dr. Nabisco.
Right. Multiculturalism is just one of the issues that we have. The other issue we have is we have this thing called a democracy. And if you just examine what a democracy is, it takes power. And again, governments can be tyrannical, but what it does is it places power, real power, the true power, in the hands of corporations, into the hands of CEOs. The press, what we have in America, the press system here, the press, the media acts as a third party between the voter and the politician. It acts as, the mind of society, and it shapes public opinion to the benefit of whatever corporation it works, that owns the media outlet. It shapes public opinion based on things that don't benefit.
Yep. No, you are. I'd say you're pretty much spot on there, man. We've identified that as a major issue out in the stream, and that's a recurring theme here. We talk about that a lot.
Yeah, we talk about the media and how they are. I say the media is the fourth branch of the government, because they really are. Like, they are the go-between between our three branches and us, the people. And a lot of people aren't really that well versed in how the media works, and so they just believe everything the media tells them, even if the media lies. And then they believe that lie, and then they vote according to that lie that they've been fed. And the media knows this, and they get away with it. And that's why I don't watch the mainstream media anymore, except for like when I do this show. I watch it just because I'm like, okay, I need to know what the hell they're talking about, even though it's garbage.
We got Paul, Esther, and chat. Luke, welcome you guys. Welcome. Dari showed up finally. It's about time, dude. A little late today, I think. Yeah. All right. JC Stack.
Everybody was a little late.
Yeah, I don't know. The notifications went out late. We got John Lovin, new guy in chat. He says, China's now fascist dictator for life, concentration camps, large corporations, military expansion, extreme nationalism. The Han dominating over other groups, extreme censorship, a surveillance police state. Okay, yeah, I mean, that's a list of a lot of bad things, for sure. But
I mean, he's not wrong.
Yeah, no, the problem with democracy is that the incentive becomes controlling the people and what they think. So that's how you gain power. You don't have to gain power through fascist means. You don't have to gain power by storming the Capitol and writing your own laws and killing the leader. You don't have to do that. All you have to do is control the people who are, in general, low intelligence, low agency. So they don't have a lot of awareness. So you can easily control them with social media, pump them full of propaganda via your media, like cartoons that may have stuff like LGBT characters in them, which we're going to talk about tonight, actually.
Oh my god.
Yep.
Hell yes, thank God, Jeremy, because I've needed to get this off my chest for a while about that crap that I've been seeing.
I'll give that segment to you and let you run with it, because this is an article that I found, and I'm going to use this as a segue into this segment here. I found a article from Insider.com about LGBTQ characters in cartoons. Now, remember when we were told about all this stuff, a few years back, it was all about, oh, don't worry, we're not coming for the kids. We're not coming for the kids.
Right?
People kept saying, oh, watch out.
We're not weirdos going after kids and trying to indoctrinate them.
Exactly. We were, people were reasonably bringing up the possibility that, wait, it kind of seems like you're going for the kids with this stuff. You're talking about it in schools constantly. And now we have an actual database, courtesy of Insider.com, of LGBTQ cartoon characters. And guess what? Well, there's quite a few of them here. So, and these are major cartoons as well. These aren't like little weird one-off cartoons. Now, I got to say, obviously, judging by my age, you can tell that I'm not really in the market for cartoons anymore. But I do recognize some of these names here. We got stuff like Arthur. I mean, Arthur was around when I was a kid. You've got
Yep, me too.
Dexter's Laboratory, DreamWorks, Dragons, Superman,
My Little Pony,
Voltron,
DuckTales.
Transformers. Wait a second, Transformers. I didn't see this one. Who is LGBT in Transformers? Apparently, there's a character named Knockout who's gay. We have a gay robot in
We have a gay robot car.
I don't even know. I don't even know how that works. Is he a Prius? Is that what he is? He's a Prius.
Gender man, orientation gay. Year confirmed 2011. Oh my god!
Yeah.
Like they have like a wiki page about him. What the
Clifford
hell?
the Big Red Dog. How old is this cartoon? There's 2 LGBT characters in Clifford the Big Red Dog. That's right, folks. You know that cartoon that we used to watch as a kid? Apparently, there's a couple lesbos in there.
Oh, okay.
Mrs. Mulberry and Dr.
didn't
Mulberry are probably married.
I watched it, but I didn't, put 2 and 2 together. So
This is the kind of stuff we're talking about, people. They put this stuff in these cartoons, and the kids just consume them without knowing any better, and they get normalized.
Right.
Star Wars, 2 Star Wars cartoons, Scooby Doo. Okay, real cartoons. I think you get the point. These are real cartoons. Okay. But this is tracking 260 LGBTQ characters in these cartoons. 260. They're not coming for the kids, though. Just 260.
yeah, just 260 characters that happen to be in children's cartoons that children are more than likely going to see.
And these aren't
I'm
even...
sorry, but yeah, this is ridiculous. Like, leave the kids out of it. I have lots of young kids in my life, and I never ever talk to them about any of this kind of stuff because honestly, they don't care. When because I was engaged last year, and when I told my nephew I was going to be marrying a female, he just looked at me and he was like, "Wait, you can do that? I thought that was for only boys and girls." It wasn't like an indoctrination thing. It was just like a general curiosity, and I answered his question. But it wasn't like I don't push any of these things on the kids in my life, because it's not. You shouldn't introduce sexuality in general to your children, let alone like homosexuality to your children. Like, keep sexuality away from them as long as possible. Keep them innocent, because the minute they lose their innocence, you can't get it back. Like, no, you can't get the innocence back once it's gone.
But, well, we got a character from Transformers Cyberverse here who is gender fluid, apparently. I don't know how they determined that. How does a robot gender fluid?
I don't know. That's what I'm like. Did they like explicitly say it, or are they like? They just like guessing?
Well, see, on this one, this is what's funny about this database. They actually, and this points to a larger problem that's actually happening here. Let me go back to this one in particular. Acid Storm from Transformers Cyberverse is gender fluid, and the representation is they have listed here as implicit. So it's not as if Acid Storm comes out in the show and says, "Hey guys, I'm gender fluid." They are they are inferring that from whatever they're watching in this show. Now, as you train people to look for this kind of stuff, this is exactly what they want you to do. They want you to look everywhere, and they want you to infer this stuff as much as possible. They want you to see gender fluid stuff. They want you to see pronouns and wherever possible, so that you are doing it automatically by yourself. They don't have to tell you. It's not explicit. So
it's you know what it is? It's not the kids that are like noticing these things. It's the adults watching these things that are like, "Oh, that character is totally gender bender, totally a gender fluid," and I'm gonna go on the internet and say so until somebody agrees with me.
Right, yeah. We got a gay gargoyle. Remember that show, Gargoyles?
Oh my god!
I used to watch that. Yep, there's a gay one.
I did too.
But the representation is also implicit here, so I don't understand.
I feel like all of this is implicit. Like, if you look at all of them, it's implicit. Like, it's all implicit. There's like, I haven't found one where they actually, like, the characters themselves actually say, "I'm a homosexual." It's all just like the viewers putting that onto that character. Mm-hmm. How much you want to bet, like, how much you want to bet, like, the creators of these shows are going to be like, "No, they're not gay. Like, what are you talking about? They're just really feminine."
Yeah, some of them might come out and say that, but I don't know, man. It's I'll give it credit. They a lot of these are labeled as implicit, but I just pulled one up randomly from Star Wars. This guy named Orca apparently is explicitly gay, and he looks like a pig with mullet, not mullet, but mutton chops. Pull this back up here. Orca from Star Wars Resistance is a gay pig man with mutton chops, explicitly gay. So is he like making out with another dude in the cartoon?
Right?
Like, what is this?
Is he like holding
Is he
hands
making out with
and
this
making
weird
out
mutant
and...
chicken thing? Is that what happens? They make out. They have like a
Right.
romance
They got
scene.
some kind of... Right, they're holding hands and like saying that they're in love with each other. Like, what is going on?
Yeah. Anyway, you guys get the point.
Leave the kids alone, bros. Leave the kids alone.
Yeah, you guys get the point. I forgot how we got onto this particular topic, but I think we proved the point here with this. They're coming after the kids with this stuff, and it's only a matter of time. I think you have the correct viewpoint on this. You shouldn't sexualize kids at all. 0%.
Kids should not have any idea what sexuality is, like in general. Like adult, like heterosexual, homosexual, it shouldn't matter. Like leave sexuality like to the adults, and like leave the children alone. Like in general, it doesn't matter. Like kids should not be sexualized in any way. Kids should not be introduced to these things at an early age. It should be a natural thing that they discover through puberty and through going through life, not have these small little like windows into sexuality through cartoons, because that's not gonna lead. Like, we're seeing this increase in like homosexuals and transgenders, and I think that this has a lot to do with it. Kids are being indoctrinated with this stuff early on, and then coming out as transgender and gender fluid and all this crap, when it's like, you're not. Like, you're really not. Like,
well, what this
you've
does,
just been indoctrinated.
What this does is it points out and exposes the fact that there's a vacuum here, where the kids aren't getting this information from the source that they should be getting it from, which is their parents. And anytime there's a vacuum, it's going to get filled by something. So weak parents are allowing this stuff to get into their kids' lives. Now, I would argue that despite the fact that kids may watch this, if you have good parents, it wouldn't affect them the same way that a kid who just watches this without any parenting at all would just watch this. So the moral of the story here, I think, is that this probably will have a negligible effect on kids as long as you have good parenting, but we have a extreme lack of good parenting in America right now. That's one of the major epidemics that we're suffering. So this is, as a result, this is very effective.
The real pandemic right now is like the lack of good parents that actually like are involved in their children's lives and actually pay attention to what their children are watching. So when I was a kid, if I was watching anything like this, my parents would tell me to not watch it. Like, straight up, they'd be like, "No, you're not." Like, it's just so silly that the gay like movement went from, we just want to be able to get married, to now we're going to indoctrinate your children with transgenderism and homosexuality before they even understand what sexuality is. It's like gone off the rails, and I'm totally on board with all of this crap being taken off the air, because this is not okay.
And that's a lot for you to say, because you are a member of that community. But I would argue that saying that you're a member of that community is kind of a stupid thing to say anyway, because they're implying that everyone thinks the same way, which is clearly false, as presented by you. Perfect example of that. I don't
identify with that community at all. Like, at all. Just for the sheer fact that I voted for Trump, I'm already out in their eyes. So I'm just waiting for the Biden brigade to come and zap me and put me in a camp.
Luke agrees that we have correctly identified the problem as terrible parenting. Luke, glad to see you agree with us there. He says we could literally fix the whole world if all parents were decent. And you know what, Luke? Yeah. I would actually, if there was one single variable that we could fix that would make the most change, I would say that's probably it. Yep. John Lubin says homeschool if you can. Yeah, well, I would go even further. I would say homeschool or die. Because your kid will be turned into a mutant if you send them to public schools. Dari says, Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
back in the day, all the mutants were homeschooled kids. Now all the normal kids are the homeschooled ones. Like, what the hell happened?
Everything is flipped. Everything is inverted as the pendulum is swung too far to whatever side the pendulum is on, and eventually it'll swing back. But yeah, you're right. I mean, homeschool now. If you don't homeschool, you're gonna turn out to be a mutant, man.
Yeah, like I said, back in the day, I remember when I was in elementary school. Like every once in a while, you'd see the homeschooled kids come in to grab their homework and stuff. And they were usually the mutants. They were the ones that had like disabilities, or they were like, they were like mentally retarded or whatever it was. And they would come, you'd sneak a peek at them and it was like, oh, the homeschool kids, what a freak. Now it's the kids in public school are the freaks.
Right. Yep. Let's see. Dark Draconis. Cool name, by the way. New name. I haven't seen him around, but welcome to the stream. Dark Draconis says, real talk. Our son is doing year 2 of school at home. Hi, Laney. There you go. Good job, man. I would say that is the correct decision. King Xenomorph is LMAO mutants. He likes my usage of the term mutants. And I say that mutants is not as an insult, not to be funny. You'll learn, if you listen to this stream long enough, that I'm using that term as an actual biological classification. These people are maladapted as humans, and they have maladaptive behaviors, which makes them mutants. They also have physical deformities, which often correlates with mental deformities, because 80% of the genome is represented in the brain and in the mind. That's why I call them mutants. I'm not saying mutants to make fun of them. I'm saying mutants because they are actual mutants. Let's see. And let's jump over to Stereo. We had a few comments come in there. I think we got a couple from the last
California
story.
talk.
Yeah, but I'll do Dr. Nabisco from 729 here.
Apologize, people. I hope I don't send too many audio clips. I can tend to do that sometimes. I'm gonna keep myself in check regarding that. But yeah, I wanted to say something about the LGBTQ agenda, mainly this trans movement crap that's really occurring now.
Yep.
It reminds me of a word in Hinduism called adharma. I'm not sure if you've heard of the word adharma. It's being out of balance or having animosity for what is natural and authentic in the universe. Another word could be misalathi. It's the Greek term. It's having hatred for the natural and the authentic, and it's the desire to corrupt it, which is what I see the trans movement doing. And it's not even stopping there. It's going to pedophilia now, and it's going to bestiality slowly but surely, and eventually it'll be a combination of all these things. Maybe 20 years from now.
That's awesome. I'm gonna look up those terms because I think both of those philosophies, they've got a long lead on the rest of society right now. So I gotta do some research on that. They're onto something.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's where when you talked about the pedophilia and the bestiality, that's where I have drawn the line when it comes to like the LGBTQ community, because the pedos they are trying to infiltrate and like raise their flags at pride events. It's like, no, you don't belong here. Get the hell out. We don't want you here. Go away. Like, no kids. Like, that's like should be the golden rule for everybody. No, don't involve kids with this kind of stuff. That's why I haven't gone back to like San Francisco Pride or any of the Pride events, because you walk down the street and there are dudes with their wangs hanging out, and then 10 feet away from them are like a group of kids with their parents. It's like, and then there's like a dude wearing like puppy mask and trying to do pup play in public, and then there's a 4-year-old in a stroller like 40 feet away. What does all this have to do with gay pride and just being able to go out as a gay or lesbian or bisexual person and not feel like being judged for holding somebody's hand in public like it used to be? Like, that's what pride is to me. But unfortunately, these BDSM and these weirdo mutants that have like this maladaptive ideology about what pride is take it the next step further and just go all out with their wangs out.
Well, here's a question for chat and everyone listening. While we go to the next couple of chats that came in from Stereo, I want to ask you guys a question, and I want to hear your answer on this. What do you think about the concept of the the slippery slope. Is the slippery slope a real thing? Because we could argue that this is part of the slippery slope. And some people out there would argue that the slippery slope is not a real thing. However, my current stance on this is that the slippery slope is a real thing. We are in the midst of it, and this started. The slippery slope, the beginning of it was legalization of gay marriage and the gay rights movement back then. Basically, we were fighting for gay rights. We wanted them to get married. That was it. But we didn't stop there. They weren't satisfied with that. That was the beginning of the slippery slope. And let me tell you, this slope is really slippery due to the subject nature. And we are now experiencing the ramifications of that. So I'd like to hear your answers on that as we go through a couple more responses on Stereo.
If you really want to be disgusted by what's going on and how they're brainwashing kids, watch the Blue's Clues Pride Parade.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
That was
no.
awful.
Just sad. And people are subjecting their children to this.
Blues Clues?
It's basically
Yep. I'll
drag queen
pull it up,
story
Jeremy.
hour on Blue's Clues with animation and trans beavers. I don't know what they're doing to these poor kids.
Trans beavers. Dude, I used to watch that show when I was a kid. Now they're doing trans beavers. I mean, come on, man. They never were doing any kind of
Here.
politics or anything back then on that show. So regardless of what kind of politics and cultural stuff they're talking about now, you do have to acknowledge that there is a larger percentage of the content dedicated to talking about politics or culture or whatever it is. So that has definitely changed. And
I linked the Blues Clues Pride Parade in our Google Doc, Jeremy.
oh god. All right, let me I'll pull this up here real quick.
Just so y'all can suffer with the rest of us.
Let's take a look here at the Blues Clues Pride Parade. Is this real?
It's a sing along. Yes, it's real, dude.
Oh my god.
It's real.
Okay, we got a bunch of dinosaurs, the rainbow flags and stuff. I think the animation quality
Got a
is
drag.
degraded a
Got a
bit.
drag queen. Yeah, and they made the song. They made it to go with the song. The ants go marching one by one. Look at this, the alligators, and then it's even better. Keep,
Oh my god. I'm gonna skip ahead because this is already making me sick.
Look at the bears. Look at the bears.
Jesus. Yeah, nope. Oh, and she's holding a microphone that has the fist symbol on it. Jesus Christ, dude. How blatant can it be? Could they be any more obvious with what they're trying to do here? I mean, that's like the communist fist on a kid's cartoon.
No, Jeremy, that's the Black Lives Matter fist because all the gays care about Black lives. That's why
Yeah.
they've updated the rainbow flag, dude. Have you seen the new updated rainbow flag? Because they changed it last year, and now this year they've improved it.
No, what's
Oh
what's-
my God,
Oh
dude.
no, they added more like colors and stuff, like brown and black and
Yeah.
everything to it. Yeah, I did see that.
No, well, they got the new
Why
one
slippery
where
slope?
I was gonna.
Lee Grant
Wish I
says
could
it's,
share my-
it's not a slippery slope, it's a cliff. Okay,
Yeah,
that's,
you just fall straight.
that's an argument. Yeah, I mean, considering the amount of time that it's changed, you could argue it's a cliff for sure. Let's see. Yeah, John Lovin says, of course it's true, not just a slope, but now a cliff. So people are agreeing that we're basically seeing a cliff here. Okay, now what kind of stuff are you copying here?
It's the Pride redesign flag.
Oh.
It's like even worse, dude. It's
Oh
like getting
my
worse and
God.
worse and worse, man.
Well, I mean, every time one little tiny group gets added in, you got to add, a line or something to it. So,
It's like, what does this mean? I don't know what this means. Isn't the yellow represented? But I guess we a yellow triangle with a circle.
it's just eventually going to be
'Cause
just
we-
like a brown square because there's too many things to add in there. It'll all just blend together.
Yeah, just make it a black flag with the pirate skull. How about that? Let's just do that.
Intersex people were excluded. Jesus. Okay. My interest in this is waned. It's now gone.
I know, but I just had to show it because it's so stupid. It's so stupid.
Globo homo at maximum. Yes, the guy in chat whose name is Women's Rights. It was a mistake. Says Globo homo at maximum. That is correct. But you know what this really is? It is it's a representation of natural selection. So, in one hand, yes, we can point this out and we say, oh my God, look how bad it is for our kids to be exposed to this. But on the other hand, regardless of whether you're living in American society in 2021 or you're living in a tent hut in 1312 or whatever it is, 800, even before that, 8000 BC, you're exposed to natural selection forces. This is just a continuation of that. Life is always going to have natural selection forces, and you have to survive them. And it just so happens that these forces get a little more complex as time goes on, because we have society now. We're not exposed to physical selection forces. These are mental selection forces that are meant to make you mentally ill. So keep that in mind. This is just, you're always going to have selection forces. This is just a continuation of that, and you have to remain diligent to protect your kids and your offspring from that. Let's jump back to stereo. We got Synergy.
Reed Delaney talking about voting for Trump. So they used to use electroconvulsive therapy to cure the gay from, the gays. Now they're going to use it to cure the Trump from the gays. Get ready.
Yeah. Oh, I'm ready. Bring it on, bitch.
Yeah.
Bring it on. That's
Oh,
what I
man.
say.
Yeah, no, you can tell.
I dare them to try to get the Trump out of me.
The inversion is no more apparent than in the fact that it's harder to come out as a Trump supporter than it is to come out as a gay person. The inversion
Oh, right.
is complete. Okay, we got let's see. We got a new guy in stereo. Let's see what he's got to say. It's a black avatar with a cowboy hat, so I think I'm gonna like it.
Yeah, I wanted to answer that question as to what all that had to do with pride, because I'm not going to lie, when I first saw some of that stuff, I was like, what the hell? Did I run into the land of Oz?
Right.
But I watched this documentary. If you get a chance to watch it, it's called The Pride of the March. And basically the mindset behind it is that they approach their struggle and their protest the same way a lot of black people did, and seeing as how it came to no avail, Pride Month, they chose a different tactic where it was shock value. It was like, all right, if you're not going to treat us as equals, you see us as something scary, we're going to do the most shocking, scary, crazy thing possible. And if you don't want to see that, then just treat us regular.
Well, I just think that that's kind of like counterproductive, personally. Like, you want to be respected, but you're gonna just go out in assless chaps and or jockstrap and like demand to be respected. No, I feel like that's not a way to get people on the side of like, yeah, we are just normal people that just don't want to be treated any differently. Like, if you go out like that, you're going to be treated differently. I'm sorry, you just are.
Well, I think that's the whole point, is they're no longer actually discriminated against, so the only way that they can bring any kind of opposition into public light is by bringing that shock value, bringing that really disgusting stuff. And then people will say, well, maybe, don't do that. Like, that's too far. And then that's the only opportunity they actually have to come back and say, well, look at how they're discriminating against us. They won't let us do this. They won't let us do that. So they're in a way, they're baiting out opposition by doing that, and then creating the illusion of oppression, creating the illusion of an oppressor, which is, it's a pretty good strategy. You got to admit it's pretty effective. So yeah, that's a great point. Check that out.
It's very effective, but I just as somebody that I do get looked at differently. Like, when I was with my my ex, we would go out and people would stare at us, and it kind of like, it would bother me at first, but then I soon realized it's like, people aren't staring at us because it's two chicks. It's because we're two pretty good looking chicks, and that you don't really see that often. So
yeah, most of the lesbian couples are disgusting.
Exactly. So nowadays it's like, people, like, I'm so used to it. People just always looking at me or staring at me, and like, I don't care anymore. So, and I just dress normally. So, but I just like I said, I just don't see the how dressing like that and having your wang out when there's kids Like, if there was no kids around, then that's fine. Do you, boo boo? I don't give a shit. But there's children there at these pride events most of the time. And I just don't think exposing children to those kinds of things is responsible as a parent. That's just me.
Dari's simping for you in the chat. He says your ex was too short for you.
No, yeah, well, she was shorter than me, but I like them short. Sorry.
Phil C brings up
When it comes to girls.
Phil C brings up a good point. He says, I think a gay guy in a suit will garner more respect than a guy in chaps. Yeah, well, that's a great point. You got to wonder why they don't present themselves as such. But again, I think it goes directly back to what we were talking about, where they want to create the illusion of opposition.
Yeah, they want that shock value, which I get. I mean, I've been there in my life. Like, I've been that person that, you know, when I went to EDC, I went like topless at EDC one year, and I learned my lesson. Like, don't do that again, because that was awful. Not only was it cold as hell, but then people were just staring at me nonstop.
Degenerate. All right, we got
I'm such a degenerate.
Dr. Nabisco in chat, and then we'll do a couple follow-ups here, and then we'll move on to the next topic because I'm getting gayed out.
Narrative. What concerns me, what worries me, and you're right. This is, you know, a form of natural selection. The strong overcoming the weak, you know, overcoming the tests that the weak succumb to. However, there have been civilizations in the past that completely crumbled due to these tests. If you look at Egypt or Babylon or Rome, they were Egypt for certain. The high IQ, the strong of the population were outbred and, you know, shouted down by the low IQ population. There were just too many of them, and that civilization disappeared. And that's what happens to civilization sometimes when the tests of evolution are too great.
Absolutely correct, sir. And that is one of the main themes of this channel, is we talk about what is the solution to that cycle, because we are in what eventually will end up being a massive extinction event, not of life, but of Western civilization. So how do you continue that? How do you ensure the continuation of Western values, Western societies through those cycles? Because everything is cyclical. We all have to acknowledge that. We are entering the winter of our society where we have to face those hardships. So how do we withstand that? That's one of the common topics we talk about. And I just realized also that the reason the stream is kind of messed up today is because we're like streaming over the old stream from last week. I didn't change it to the new stream.
Right? I was gonna bring it up, but I didn't want to be a jerk in the middle of it and be like, yo, Jeremy, the title of the stream is messed up.
Yeah, it's because I didn't change the restream settings, so that's why people probably are having a hard time figuring out what's going on, because I think there's still another event on the channel that may have been gone live at 7. Anyway, sorry about that, guys. I don't get everything right every time.
Yeah, he's not perfect. I mean, he's damn near perfect, but he's not quite perfect.
Close. All right, we got another follow-up from this black guy with the cowboy hat, and then we'll get on to the next topic here.
I totally agree. And I want to take this time to say I really appreciate you guys having this talk. This is really good. With your permission, I'd like to follow both of you, if that's okay.
Please do.
Oh, yeah, buddy, feel free. Please do. And also, we stream live on youtube.com/weekly narrative every Tuesday, Saturday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So you can feel free to follow us on there if you have a YouTube. You know, everything, you know, we do YouTube, we do DLive, we try to diversify our portfolio. But yeah, absolutely, follow us on here. Would love to talk to you, man. Agree with you on a lot of stuff, man.
That's why we come out here to these platforms and we have, provocative titles and stuff and talk about provocative stuff, is because we're trying to build a community. We're trying to find people like you who appreciate the conversations, appreciate talking about complicated ideas. And, we're not looking for conformity. We're looking for people who just like to think. That's really all it is. He's got one more follow-up here, and then we'll move on.
It's all one big illusion. Well, see, we got to look at it. These are crazy mind games that people are trying to play to help divide the undividable. You know what I mean?
Mind games keep on playing sideways.
Perfect segue into our next story and the main topic of the night that you would see on the stream title if I accurately started the stream. Sorry about that again. This is the one source of one time I get to use Breitbart as a source. I allow myself one a month, just one a month from Breitbart.com, but I could have chosen any number of sources for this, so don't get upset about the fact that I'm sourcing Breitbart on this. This is all over the internet. This is a brand new poll that shows that Democrats are twice as likely as Republicans to end friendships over political disagreements. It goes directly to what this guy was just saying. This is all built and designed to divide the population, keep us weak, keep us in a state of mental anxiety, which makes us, mentally plastic. We are moldable. We're vulnerable to propaganda, vulnerable to being misled. And that's really what the entire point is. We overconsume, and then we are easy to persuade. So let's take a look at some of the data here. A survey indicates Democrats are twice as likely to end in friendships. Democrats are twice as likely as Republicans to report having ended a friendship over a political disagreement, 20% versus 10%. The results from American Survey Center reads, the survey found, quote, political liberals are also far more likely than conservatives are to say they are no longer friends with someone due to political differences, 28% versus 10% respectively. That's almost 3 times as much. And this is one of the best parts. This is the key right here. This is the key. Okay, ready? The survey additionally indicates 33% of liberal women have, quote, stopped being friends with someone because of their politics.
Yep, I can personally attest to that.
Quote, if they were a fan of Donald J. Trump, I want nothing to do with them. The poll quotes a female's perspective. So, now, you guys, if you're new to the stream, you're not going to be aware of this, but for those of you who do watch this regularly, you know that one of the common themes that I talk about is what? The hyper-feminization of society. And I've identified that. I would posit that that is one of the main sources of the contention and that division that we see right now. They want to elevate feminine values, feminine psychology to be the primary social order. And then they want to exploit that because feminine psychology is based off of what? It's based off of emotionality. It's based off of
overreactivism.
Being overreactive, being neurotic. Neuroticism is a very emotional trait, or a very feminine trait, and that's easily exploitable by things like negative press about political people, negative press about political events. It's a great system that they've got set up where you just make everyone operate by feminine imperatives, and then you exploit those with just, disagreeable stories. And then this is the result of that. I don't know. What do you think, Delaney? You said you've seen this happen in your life?
Yeah, I've had a few friends that have kind of stopped talking to me, or if we do talk, we don't talk about politics and political stuff because I did vote for Trump and I'm a little bit more on the Republican leaning side when it comes to politics. And because of that, they think I'm like a racist and a bigot and a homophobe and a xenophobe. And it's like, I'm literally none of those things. I just care about America and I care about American values and I want to try to preserve that. And yeah, that's just too much for some people because when you say American values, they automatically think you mean like white. And it's like, no, I don't care about your skin color. I care about your ideas. I care about what you're doing with your life and what you're contributing to society. Your skin color is like the last thing I absolutely think about.
Well said. Yeah.
And
you know what the ironic thing about it is?
For a lot of,
is that they are actually being the bigots in that situation because they're not interested in understanding why you voted for Trump. They just think, oh, you voted for Trump, so they automatically dislike you. They discredit your opinion. They want to unfriend you, whatever it is. It's the ultimate irony.
It's quite sad that just based off of who you vote for. Even though like the two political choices we had this last election cycle were both pretty terrible, it's just based off of who you vote for. Automatically, people think that you're a terrible person, and it's like no, like it's a rock and a hard place when it came to voting. So, what do you really think that voting for Joe Biden this last election cycle was better than voting for Trump. I'm sorry, like, no. At least with Trump, we had 4 years, and it was like yes, there were some dips in that 4 years, but overall, I think he did an okay job, a lot better than I originally anticipated. So that's why I gave him another vote, because I was like, you know what? Why not do another 4 years of this guy and give him a shot, and maybe things will get better under him. Again, like, but people just automatically think you voted for Trump, you're a white supremacist, or you're a Nazi, or you only think white people deserve to be in this country. And that's the farthest thing from what I believe.
Bigotry. Bigotry.
So I've got Google up right now, and I've got the definition of bigotry here. Now, the fascinating thing about this is that the definition has changed quite dramatically over the last few years, as, of course, we know the leftists are the primary purveyors of the language war. They love to change the definition of words in their favor. This is one of those words that they've changed, but it still applies here against them in this particular instance. So the bigotry is defined as unreasonable attachment to a belief, opinion, or faction, in particular, prejudice against a person or people based on the basis of their membership of a particular group. Does that sound at all like what has been happening to you with your friends? They realize that you're Republican or you voted for Trump, and then they instantly have an unreasonable reaction to that.
Yeah, most of them don't talk to me anymore. Or like I said, I don't tell them who I voted for, because I don't want them to have that bigotry towards me, because it's like, look, I love you, and I won't sit there and like not be your friend because you voted differently from them. But unfortunately, in this day and age that we live in, people in my age group that I graduated high school with, for them, it's with this whole like phenomenon of Trump and what he's done to our country and how he's divided our people so radically. It's like, if you voted for him, you might as well have been like voting for Hitler. And that's not the case for a lot of people. Like, it really is not.
Now, here's what's great. Actually, before I go to that, I want to point out that that bigotry it's directly in this quote that they collected on this article. It says, if they were a fan of Donald J. Trump, I want nothing to do with them. That's a quote from one of the females that they had interviewed in the survey. That is literally the person demonstrating the exact definition of bigotry. So this is clear cut. I'm not stretching the definition. I'm even being generous because I'm using their modified version of the definition of bigotry that they tried to fix in their favor. That still does not actually,
it doesn't work in their favor, because they're still being bigoted towards an entire populace of people, the other half of the country that voted for Trump. Like, you are showing your true colors by saying, like, if you voted for it's just like what Eminem said when Trump was in office. He said, if you voted for Trump, don't buy my music. What?
Bigotry.
Like, what is our money not good enough for you?
Well, here's the great part about it, and this is how you know I'm not BSing you when I talk about the psychology of masculine versus feminine. There's a line in here that says the findings come after the Harvard Gazette. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Harvard or not, but it's fairly reputable. The findings come after the Harvard Gazette reported in 2016 that, quote, men are more likely than women to make peace with their competitors after the competition ends. So not directly related, but it points out the differences in the gender psychology. Men are more likely to make peace with their competitors after competition ends. Women, who are much more neurotic, as there's just mountains of evidence about, personality differences between men and women. Women are more neurotic. They're less likely to make peace with competitors. They're more likely to be, in this case, bigoted against people who have different opinions.
More likely to be overreactive and catty and hold grudges and not be able to just agree to disagree. And even if, like, I disagree with you, I still love you. Most women can't think like that, unfortunately.
Yep. So I talk about, at least, I try to push this idea that everyone needs to get in their head. Everything you look at in the news, every story, at the root of it is either going to be a masculine or a feminine psychologically triggering story. They're either, it's either based on meritocracy or it's based on fairness. It's either based on neuroticism or it's based on emotionlessness. Those are extremes, but those are the masculine and feminine versions of this. Now we have a story that demonstrates my underlying narrative appears to be correct. Again, I mean, we talk about this stuff pretty much every week. You can see how the feminine psychology is being exploited in society to split and divide us. This is a feminine thing, and this is a symptom of the hyper-feminized society that they're exploiting.
And there's not enough like masculine men out there to see this crap and just go, this is stupid. Like, why are we letting this happen? Or there are masculine men, but those guys get labeled as like, what's the term?
Those are the toxic
masculine.
Yeah. Anything that's actually
masculine
is toxic. That's how they dissuade and disincentivize people from displaying masculine traits. They just call it toxic masculinity, and they create programs in schools and organizations to eliminate those.
They just want to make all masculinity toxic, when masculinity at its root is not toxic at all. Like, just like femininity at its root it's not really that toxic. It's just what has been done to both sides it's just really just warped the view of both sides. Like, there's toxic femininity, but of course, because women have been so oppressed and for so long, even though we haven't, they automatically want to just propel women and women's voices, and anything a woman says is not wrong, and anything a man says is less than, because men have been the oppressors. And that's a form of oppression, like stomping down somebody's voice just because of their their sex or their gender. That's a form of oppression and bigotry right there.
What's funny about
that?
We
need masculinity in this world.
Nobody is more oppressed in this society right now than straight white males, and
absolutely,
we don't complain at all. We acknowledge we're being oppressed, but we're not little bitches about it. We push through it. We could be doing better. We could be actually turning.
And you thrive anyways.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best part, is that we thrive anyways. I could give you examples of how, I've been shafted in professional environments because of being straight and white, but I don't dwell on those. I don't complain about those. I just push through anyway. Yep. And we're going to continue to do that, I think, as a collective, straight white males, just because it's our psychology. It drives us to do that. It's just built in. But
I also think, Jeremy, you were lucky enough to have parents that raised you to not let yourself play that victim card. They taught you, like, if somebody closes one door, guess what? There's a window, there's another door somewhere else that you can open up, and it'll probably be a better opportunity than that one closed door in front of you.
Absolutely.
So that's also the biggest factor that you had going for you, was you had actually really good parents.
Shout out to my parents for sure. They definitely that's the main factor in anyone's success, really, I think, is your parenting. Again, drawing back to the subject of parenting.
Back to parents.
Somehow everything leads back to parents, oddly enough. But that is the case. But I think it should be blatantly obvious to anyone who at least listens to this stream that what we're seeing in society, everything from Black Lives Matter to socialism, communism, Marxism, you name it, all the problems that we have are the result of a hyper-feminized society. Everything down to, defriending people, political arguments, all this stuff. This is all, the root cause is the hyperfeminization of society. And I don't really hear anybody else talking about that. I hear people talking about the fact that, why are you demonizing masculinity? That's only one tiny aspect of what's really going on. That's almost a distraction. What's really happening is, like you said, we're elevating a feminine psychology, feminine gynocentrism. We're elevating that to the peak of value in society, and we're completely smashing down masculine values, masculine traits. And then people wonder why everything is so messed up. We're going to talk about exactly how messed up things are, especially for women, in our next story. But before we do, it's time for the midstream shill. If you guys are tuning in, this is the #1 alt-centrist podcast on the internet. We go live every Tuesday and Saturday at 7 p.m. PST. We are live on stereo and youtube.com/weeklynarrative. Choose your consumption method. If you like the audio, you can do stereo, video on YouTube for as long as we last anyway, because we do talk about controversial things. We are here to talk about how to think, not what to think. And hope you guys are enjoying the show on this beautiful Saturday night. We got a couple stereo comments that came in, and then we're going to move on to our next topic, which is directly related. We're on a good segue roll, so I don't want to break that.
I know, this has been good. You guys are awesome. Love you guys.
We're flowing. flowing. Dr. Nabisco.
You know, it's funny how they like to keep updating words, isn't it? You know, I thought about that a lot. If you can change the meaning of a word, then you have the potential to change the law, what the law says, without actually changing the law. And that's what they love to do, is to reperceive the fundamental elements of legal language, especially in the Constitution. What is arms? Are they talking about your basic right to just defend yourself with anything, not necessarily a gun? So yeah, in the future, when it comes to writing something like a Constitution, a dictionary will have to go along with it, outlining exactly what those words mean in the time they were written down.
Yes.
Well,
No.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I think our founding fathers, when they said the right to bear arms, they meant the right to hang a pair of bear arms on your wall. But that's just me.
I like that idea, actually.
Just kidding.
He pointed out that we should track the definitions with the dates on them. That's a great idea. I never thought of that, because that will demonstrate the weakness of the people who have to rely on this technique. Because if you have to change the definition of words constantly to gain more power or further your ideology, it should be obvious to anyone that, well, I mean, why you shouldn't have to change the definition of words to as time. If you look at the definition of bigotry, for example, it's probably changed like 5 times in the last 5 years. We saw literally the definition of words change in real time when what was it? Amy Coney
Macy
Barrett.
Hirono.
Macy
Macy Hirono
Hirono.
and Amy Coney Barrett.
We saw the definition of words change in real time, where you could go to dictionary.com after it was said in this one way. What was it? Something to do
Sexual
with
preference.
Sexual preference. Yes, thank you. Nailed it. Yeah, that was it. Crazy. I mean, we're well aware, Dr. Nabisco, of the language war. Again, that is another one of the topics we talk about here a lot on this channel, and we try to keep everyone aware of the fact that a lot of the power that's being gained by their side is the result of the language war and the tactics that they use to modify language in their favor. Rob B in the YouTube chat says thumbs up 11, and we have 23,000 people watching. Yeah, you guys got to get the thumbs up. Come on, let's get some engagement. Get the thumbs up. You got to fight Susan. Let's see.
Yep. Susan sent tornadoes after Jeremy, and now we got to fight the algorithms and get the engagement up, folks. Come on, y'all. Come on.
True.
You can do it.
If you look back like 5 streams, I got a tornado warning on stream, and they tried to cut the stream. John Lovin says boys have fistfights and still are friends. Girls fight and are enemies forever. Not letting boys let off steam gave us mass school shooters. Well, yeah, that's a whole different topic, but it's still related in that the way that boys learn is completely different than the way the girls learn, and our education system is tailored to the feminine system of learning. And then we wonder why the boys come out all jacked up, because we've literally been putting them in essentially what amount to prisons for their entire adolescent life. And then we wonder why they come out at the end with $80,000 in debt and they're all jacked up. Maybe a little root cause analysis is warranted there. But, yeah. Let's see here. Okay, let's go to, we got one more comment from Dr. Nabisco and Osis, and then we'll move on to our next topic, which is teen suicide rates. Directly related.
Oh, thrilling.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Again, guys, I'm sorry for sending so many voice clips. But this is a really
You're good.
interesting topic, and I've got a lot of thoughts about it. With regards to the feminization of society, and with regards to establishing a narrative that puts men as the oppressors and women as the oppressed, I see it as dividing the family, dividing man and woman.
Yes.
It's an attempt to make more individuals. It's an attack on the tribe or the nation, the culture.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree with that. It's go ahead, Delaney.
I was going to say, if you destabilize the nuclear family, then you lose everything. I mean, the nuclear family is what makes our society run so great, is men and women working together, even though they're different and they think of things differently. But that's okay. There's the masculine side, the feminine side, and they can work together cohesively and make beautiful children that can work through the problems as well. But unfortunately, with how society is like he said, is dividing us and dividing men from women and making women hate men and label men as toxic masculine, and men resenting women and not ever wanting to get married to them and, you know, get married and raise children with them. It's dividing us even farther. And me and you agree, Jeremy, that like the number one thing that if you want to raise successful children is to get married and raise them together. And if you don't get married, that's fine, but just raise your children together at least.
Yeah, the marriage thing, it's not really a good deal for guys these days in modern America.
Yeah,
so
it's not. But
it's not necessary to have the government involved to raise a good kid. Let's just say that.
But as long as you're like on the same page and you raise your children, decide to raise your children together, and you're on the same page as far as how you raise them and what you want to, what values you want to instill in them, that's what really matters. And unfortunately, it's
and they know that.
It's just got, they know this.
This is why they're targeting. This is why they're. This is why they're targeting masculine and feminine psychology and the traits that underlie masculine and feminine, is because they're ultimately going for the family. And it's a little bit ironic. You're exactly right, Dr. Nabisco, that's what they're trying to do. It's a little bit ironic, though. You got to point out the irony that whereas we call collectivism bad all day, there is a point to where when the units become small enough, collectivism is a good thing. And in this particular case, we're talking about the family unit. That is, you know, in a sense, it's collectivism. We don't want individualism to the point to where every single person is a atomized unit that's completely solo. That's not good. That's bad. We need to have collectivism at a small scale, but collectivism at a large scale, like 350 million people collectivism, terrible.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
Collectivism as like your husband, wife, children, and then maybe like the grandparents. Fine. Perfect. You know, that's what you need.
Yep.
But
extended family.
You know, like you said, extended family, but you know, your entire city, your entire state, your entire country, all in a collective unit. No, that's not going to work because not everybody thinks the same. Not everybody wants the same out of life. And Commander Osa says too many leeches. I agree. There are people who aren't going to pull their weight.
Don't call people leeches, Osis. That's dehumanizing. All right, we got actually, speaking of Osis, he dropped a stereo comment here.
Well, if you want to talk about the redefinition of words in the Second Amendment, they talk about a well-regulated militia. Leftists are disingenuous, and they talk about, that means the government gets to regulate you. No. When that's not what it means at all. Well-regulated militia was well-armed and well-disciplined and organized. It did not mean that the government would tell the militia what to do and what they could have. So that's just one example of the myriad times the left has done that. They do it consistently.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, of course, because they want that power. They want, as long as the military is under their control, that's what they want. But the minute like people actually take control of their own militia and actually harness their own power with firearms and with weapons and, you know, protect themselves, that's what they're against, because they don't want people protecting themselves. They want the government to protect us, when the government, it's the military's job to do that, but not to the extent that the left wants it.
Yeah, it's not supposed to protect you on a day-to-day basis from like robbers and thieves. It's supposed to protect you from other countries trying to. Let's make sure we don't lose sight of what the scope of that protection really means.
Absolutely.
Continuing on to our next story. There is a direct link. I would say there's a direct link to this story. And speaking of the manifestation of female psychology in society and the discordance between how that is portrayed in society and what's expected of women, this is a new study from the CDC, our favorite source. One of our favorite sources.
Oh, I love the CDC.
The emergency department visits for suspected suicide attempts among U.S. adolescent girls ages 12 to 17 rose 51% between February 21st and March 20th, 2021, during the COVID-19 pandemic, compared with the same time
Just 1
in
month?
2019. Yes.
Oh, 20. Okay. No, 1 month. It went up 50%, or 1 year?
So in the 30 days they looked at between February 21st and March 20th, it was 51% higher than 2019.
Oh, okay.
So there's a little bit of nuance to this, and I want to get into the actual article here because I found it strange that they were referring back to 2019, but I suppose that was the earliest year that there was no COVID-19 pandemic. Now, there is kind of a ramping up of the numbers from 2020 to 2021. So this is interesting, and we'll talk about this and maybe see if we can come up with some ideas of why this would be. So the CDC examined trends in ED visits for suspected suicide attempts during January 1st, 2019 through May 15th, 2021. So basically, all the way through January of 2019 until now, for all intents and purposes, among persons aged 12 to 25, by sex, and at 3 distinct phases of the COVID-19 pandemic. Compared with the corresponding period in 2019, persons aged 12 to 25 years made fewer ED visits for the suspected suicide attempts during March 29th through April 25th, 2020. So this is where the nuance comes in, and that's why I wanted to point out the actual study, because from March 29th to April 25th in 2020, the suicide attempts were lower than 2019. However, by early May 2020, ED visit counts for suspected suicide attempts began increasing among adolescents aged 12 to 17. So they kind of narrowed the age range here, but especially by girls during July 26th through August 22nd, 2020. So by this point, we're kind of several months into the pandemic. The mean weekly number of ED visits for suspected suicide attempts among girls aged 12 to 17 years was 26% higher than during the same period a year earlier. And from February 21st to March 20th, 2021, which is basically over a year later since the pandemic started, the mean weekly visits for suspected suicide attempts were 50% higher among girls aged 12 to 17 compared with the same period in 2019. So you can see it ramps up through the pandemic. As we progress throughout this pandemic, 6 months in, it wasn't that bad. A few months in, it was actually lower than 2019. So I don't know how would you interpret that? You got any initial thoughts on that?
I mean, it's probably ramped up because these girls have, we were locked down and then we opened up, we locked down, and women were naturally pretty social creatures, and not being able to actually go out and do things and be a part of society, it's no wonder these girls are trying to do self-harm and going to the emergency department to get some help, because it's mentally very draining on a person to not be able to socialize and be with your family and be around people that care about you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think you nailed the big factor in that, and that women are much more social. They look for, as implied earlier, women operate primarily through social means, not through physical means, whereas men like to fight each other and then make up afterwards. Women will attack each other psychologically. They'll attack your reputation. So they operate in more the psychological world, and we're talking about a period where they don't get to go to school. They don't get to go to, this is age 12 to 17, so these are high schoolers, okay, in the prime years of their life where they want to, get boyfriends and talk about drama and gossip and do all this stuff.
They're all going through puberty as well during that period of time.
Yes.
So there's also the rapid onset of the estrogen hormone going through their body. So it's imagine everything in your body is telling you to go out and be social and be with your friends and do what normal teenagers are supposed to do, but you can't do it because of the pandemic.
Right. And
because you're going to get grandma sick.
Yeah. And then what fills that gap? What fills the gap of not being able to go to school is social media.
Social media.
Ooh, that is, and we've already know by studies from guys like Jonathan Haidt that social media is absolutely catastrophic to girls. And for some reason, we haven't figured that out yet. Here's a question I want to raise. Why haven't we classified social media, or even media in general? Because we've already talked about studies that show that that media outlets that perpetuate negative stories cause mental harm to people who consume those stories. We know with the data that social media harms young girls especially, and yet we don't take any action against that, policy-wise, regulation-wise. We don't at least classify it as a health risk, like cigarettes. You would just say, you just put something on the label that says, hey, this smoking cigarettes is a health risk. That's it. We don't have any kind of warnings or precautions for social media, despite the fact that there's overwhelming mountains of evidence that show this is terribly catastrophic for our kids.
Yeah, Jeremy, unfortunately, even if like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all these social media platforms put a label like, hey, you shouldn't consume more than 2 hours of this a day, people would still like just do it anyways and then complain about being depressed and
No, you're right.
Then sit there and wonder why.
Yeah, it
It's
goes
just
back
like,
to the lack of
have you
agency.
ever like looked at have you ever looked at a plastic bag and seen like a warning label on a plastic bag and it says don't put this over your face because you might suffocate, and you sit there and wonder why in the world would they put this on there? Because somebody has died putting a plastic bag over their head and suffocated themselves, and some family member like sued that company for wrongful death because that person wasn't smart enough to realize like putting a plastic bag over your head isn't gonna it's not gonna allow you to breathe. Same thing goes for social media. They put warnings on these things. If we told everybody, like, say this segment of this live stream like was transmitted to the world, and all the women in the world got this warning, like of, hey, you should maybe consume less social media, they would still do it because they're addicted to the likes. They're addicted to being liked. They're addicted to just liking others. Like it's been physically proven that doing the likes and doing the tapping the screen is addictive. It makes you happy, and you're addicted to that happiness. And if you don't have anything else going on in your actual real life, then all you have is your phone. And when you don't have that, guess what? All that dopamine, all that serotonin, all those things that make you happy are gone. No wonder these girls are trying to kill themselves. They probably are trying to kill themselves because their parents took their phone away from them.
Yeah, I mean, how many studies would you guess we've talked about, or studies of? I mean, we've heard about kids being locked in rooms in Canada. We've heard stories of, kids being barred from schools in America. They are being isolated, separated, being forced to go through Zoom. All kinds of stories of suicides, mental health increasing. At least probably 10 stories that we've covered on this channel, just about the all-out assault on kids today and the complete lack of regard for their health. And I think it's funny that you mentioned that with the bags, for example, somebody did that, and it was obvious that they died as a result of the bag, so they were sued because of that, right? The only reason they're getting away with this is because there's no way to link. Think about this. There's no way for anybody to link the suicide directly back to social media use or social isolation, because you can't like do a blood test for social isolation. You can't do a DNA test for they died because
it's all a psychological test.
Yeah, you can't test for social media overuse, so there's no way to sue Twitter or sue Facebook as a result of a wrongful death or whatever it may be, despite the fact that they are no doubt responsible for probably thousands of suicides. Thousands. So,
I mean, honestly, I think Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, they should just like regulate themselves. And it's like, if you've been on for more than 4 hours a day, you're cut off. Like you can't log on for the rest of the day.
Well, see, that would hurt the bottom line though. Then the shareholders.
I know.
Those shareholders.
Well, I know with certain video games, like online video games, if you're online for more than like 48 hours, they will cut you off and they will tell you to like go to bed. So why can't Instagram, all these social media platforms do the same thing? Like if video game companies can realize, and those video game companies, like you're handing your money over hand over fist to these people to play online. If these companies can do that, then why can't these social media companies? Because there's no regulation telling them to do it, or there's no like internal regulation going on at these companies, like going, okay, maybe we should like limit the amount that people can consume of our product, because clearly it's leading to something really bad.
Yeah, no, and YouTube chat nailed exactly what I was going to say next, and that this is really, as harsh as it sounds. Now, I want to introduce harshness back into society. I think we need to introduce harshness back into society. This is going to be harsh what I'm about to say, but this is again just natural selection at work. This is terrible parenting. This is people succumbing to things that are out there, because the flip side, I don't want to control the companies at all. I think I want to let them do whatever they want. Let them make the programs as addictive as they possibly can, which is actually what they do. That is what they do. They make them as addictive as possible. And I don't want to stifle their ability to do that at all, because I think it's still on the responsibility of the individual, of the families who parent these kids, to prevent them from succumbing to that addictive behavior, succumbing to that destructive program or whatever game or app that they're using. So, I think that's the only consistent way to be for freedom, but also assign responsibility to where it really belongs. As sad as it sounds and as harsh as it is, I do think that this is just another manifestation of, again, we talk about this, natural selection is not physical anymore, it's mental. And this is what this story is displaying. It's just the result of the natural selection forces that are on Western society's youth right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really believe in regulation either. It's just like a point that I talk out loud about, because yeah, I don't want to see young women try to hurt themselves and try to kill themselves because they're starving for actual real attention in their real life.
Yeah, no,
that's really what I think it boils down to.
Yeah, it really, in this particular situation, this is the result of the government imposing controls on the people that are authoritarian, that are causing damage. Now, without the whole lockdown and pandemic and all that kind of stuff, this is still happening, right? There's still suicides as a result of social media use, from females especially. So in that general sense, it is the responsibility of the individuals in the family. But in this particular case, yeah, I think you're actually right. We can point the blame, and the majority of the blame, on the government for locking schools down, for isolating people without any good reason. So let's see here.
Yeah, they want to get rid of schools in general and like make kids like be less social. It's like, no, that's what school is all about, is like getting outside, meeting your friends, socializing. That's how kids learn, is through socialization.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we have a complete lack, a complete ignorance of social sciences, ironically, because everyone graduates from school these days with degrees in social sciences, but that just shows you how useless they really are. Our public understanding of social sciences is garbage. So.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's go. We got coming from Dr. Nabisco and one from Osis.
There used to be a term in ancient European history that defined the people that we're contending with. And these people used to be burned at the stake when caught. They were the witches. They were the ones who made beasts of other people. They were the ones that demonized and dehumanized those they considered their opponents in the eyes of the general public. And, convince the general public with their, and I'm using quotation fingers, spell casting.
Yeah, I mean, I always like to think about how reality in modern day would be interpreted by previous eras, previous time periods, and how it's going to be interpreted in the future as well. So something like this, you could say, in long ago times, would be referred to as a mass spell. This is it. There's a spell that's been cast on our female population in particular that makes them uncontrollably seek out validation via social media, via dating apps, via whatever technological means that they have. There's a mass spell that's been cast, and I would agree. It's kind of what we're seeing. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to burn anybody at the stake, but I don't even know if,
Here's hoping. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Let's see. Dari says in the YouTube chat, if you lack morals as a child, what good do you bring to a social situation? Well, I mean, that goes back directly to the parenting question, right? Because if you lack morals as a child, can you really blame that on the child?
No.
It's really the parents' fault at that point, right? Yep, exactly. Dari says, bringing the conversation back to parenting. Why do all these stories go back to parenting? Because it's not like I planned out the stream to talk about parenting. It's just that as we work through these and talk through it and identify the root causes of all this stuff, it goes back to these same places over and over and over again.
Yeah, just terrible parents raising their terrible children. Even though I don't inherently believe children are terrible, it's just if you don't have the fortunate enough mindset to parent, these poor children are the ones that suffer. And unfortunately, there's a lot of kids out there that have terrible parents.
That's why,
vast majority of them, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's why when people ask, one of the more normie digestible answers that I give for how to save society is simply just have kids and raise them right. You are doing the most egregious thing that these people could possibly ask for. So I have a more complex answer to how to save society, but that would be like the normie acceptable answer if somebody asked me on like ABC News or something.
Yeah, that would be like one of the most simple, like not easiest, but one of the more simple answers to a really convoluted, complicated question.
Right.
Is like, have children and make sure when you have children with the person that you are on the same page, raising them with the right morals and ethics that you want them to be raised with. Because like, I'm sorry, but all these lefties out there, like super hardcore lefties out there having a bunch of kids and raising their kids to be a bunch of hippy dippy losers. Like, no, your kids are going to be garbage. And I don't want those, but even in the right wing too, like the super mucho conservative people too, like y'all are good. Y'all can be really crappy parents too. It's all just dependent on like, you guys have to be on the same page, mother and father, whatever it is.
Well, they're not even having kids. They don't want to have kids because of global warming. They're literally, this is what I mean by mutant ideology. They are inherently self-destructive. If you looked at an animal in the wild and they like didn't even try to mate with other animals, you would say something's wrong with that frog or whatever it is. It's got some kind of mutation where it doesn't want to reproduce.
Yep.
That's what we mean by mutation. Believing that global warming is the reason why you shouldn't have kids. That is a perfect example of mutation. Let's go to Osis in chat.
I've thought about these issues a lot, and I think a lot of it stems on the post-industrial society we've set up in terms of the types of jobs we have. So yeah, there are menial jobs. Those are going to be replaced by automation anyway, between truck drivers and warehouse people or whatever. We have a bunch of women in the workforce that don't really have any skills. They're not in STEM. They're in marketing or some other
social sciences.
Really do
HR.
nothing, produce nothing type job. And they sit in cubicles and they sit in their office and they sit behind a computer and they don't do anything. They don't produce anything.
Yep.
And they think because they do that they're like hot shit. And these types of jobs can only exist because we've outsourced our production to a foreign country, and that's screwing us too. So that's part of the problem.
Yeah, Rosie the Riveter would be disappointed in women today.
Well, I think Rose the Riveter was like the start of the propaganda that was like, you belong in the workforce, you can do what men can do, and you can be a strong thing too. And, you know, like, Rosie the Riveter is not good, I don't think.
I mean, I think she was good in the means, like, it
She's
inspired
good for wartime.
women to, like...
That's what...
Yeah, it was good for wartime, and it inspired women to, like, actually, like, get into the work field and be like, yeah, you can actually do the job that men are doing. You might not be able to do as better of a job as men, but you can still do it and get into those fields and get into that workforce. But Osis is right. Like, there's a lot of women in the workforce, and they all have, like, stupid jobs where it's like, why are you even here? Like, what is this job you're doing?
Yeah, no, it's the women in the workforce is a really big problem, and because when the women are in the workforce, guess where they're not? They're not raising kids. They're not leading a family. They're not, and guess what? And the kids get shipped off to daycare where they get taught about how to do, you know, LGBT parades with Blue's Clues Storytime Hour, and they get, you know what I mean? Like it's all. Speaking of outsourcing, they're outsourcing the raising of the children. So the kids that do get raised, you know, not to mention the fact that we're in a massive like repopulation deficit. Like our reproduction numbers are way below repopulation levels. Those ones that are being born, they're being shipped off directly to the propaganda pipeline. So
yep.
Yeah, it's not
getting handed off to be raised by YouTube and television and just everything.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. We got Moneypenny in the YouTube channel. She says, "Watch the Weinstein video on how to save the world. Then now unblocked and restored." Are you referring to the COVID one, where you talked about the I word, which we can't say on YouTube? If so, I did
we'll
watch
get banned
that.
again.
Otherwise, I don't know which one you're referring to, but I will check that out.
Heck yeah.
And anything from the Weinstein brothers, I definitely do recommend. Although Eric Weinstein can be a little hard to interpret. Speaking of that, I'm using this as a yet another perfect segue into our next topic. We're going to do a little bit of a 90-degree turn here into our COVID segment of the night. We got some interesting. This is an interesting tweet from Brett Weinstein himself, actually, as if it was planned and choreographed.
Right.
Had it lined up and ready to go. From Brett
Let's do it.
Weinstein on Twitter. Now, Brett Weinstein, the reason why I like to cite Brett Weinstein specifically is because he has been kind of the tip of the spear in confronting the COVID hypocrisy and the COVID inconsistencies. Let's be generous and call it inconsistencies in the American response to COVID and how we're treating certain treatments and drugs as a response to COVID. In particular, in this instance, we're looking at Merck. Merck, being a pharmaceutical manufacturer, is found to be in an interesting predicament as they have a drug that's been on the market for a long time called something. Starts with Ivor and ends with Ectin. And they own that drug. There's been billions of doses of that drug administered. It's a very well-studied and safe drug. It's known to be safe. And on the flip side, they have... Well, before I get into the flip side, let's just look at what Merck is doing with the I word. So Merck has made public statements regarding the use of this drug during the COVID-19 pandemic, and they basically said they're discrediting their own drug entirely. They're saying there's no scientific basis for therapeutic benefits. They're saying there's no basis for potential therapeutic benefits, as if to say, don't even bother trying to study it. Don't even bother trying to look at it as a potential treatment. They say there's no meaningful evidence for clinical activity or clinical efficacy in patients with COVID-19, and there's a concerning, this one's very interesting, there's a concerning lack of safety data in the majority of studies. Remember, this is a drug that's been administered like billions of times, okay? It's an anti-parasitic drug that also has...
So it was billions of times before the coup,
yes,
or billions of times after the coup?
No,
okay.
It's not for COVID. It would be used as off-label. This is primarily an I just said it. It's anti-parasitic drug that also happens to have very good anti-inflammatory properties and antiviral properties, which is how it was discovered and being used for this. So it's been used safely for a long time, but Merck comes out. They made it. It's Merck's drug. They come out and they say, oh, no, that drug is terrible. Now, why? Think about the principles that we try to teach on the channel, okay? So if you want to understand reality, you have to understand what?
The incentives.
You have to understand the incentives. So is there an incentive for Merck to discredit its own drug that's been on the market for a long time? Well, Brett Weinstein says, Eureka, we appear to have solved a major pharmaceutical mystery. Why did Merck attack the safety of its own decades-old extremely safe drug? Turns out Merck is racing to EUA, which stands for Emergency Use Authorization, on a dangerous new drug to add to its COVID portfolio. Oh. It's exactly what we've been saying for multiple weeks on this channel. Big Pharma trying to get a little bit of profits. So, let's jump over to this new this new article from Business Wire relating to Merck's announcement of a new drug called. You want to give a shot at that? I mean, how would you even say that? Molnupiravir. Why do they got to do that?
Yeah.
Why do they got to do?
Let's just call it Molny.
Mjolnir. It's the Thor's hammer.
Mjolnir. Yeah, we'll call it Mjolnir.
Why do they got to make these drugs sound like that? But anyway, Merck announces supply agreement with the U.S. government for Mjolnir for an investigational oral antiviral candidate for the treatment of mild to moderate COVID-19. U.S. government commits to purchase approximately 1.7 million courses of Molnupiravir upon issuance of emergency use authorization or approval by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. I mean, if there's any time for a mic drop that's more appropriate, I don't think there is any. This is it. This is a mic drop moment from Brett Weinstein. This is literally exactly what we've been saying with regards to the alternative treatments that have been available for COVID. I'm not talking about their efficacy. I'm not talking about their effectiveness at all. We're simply pointing out the fact that Merck has a drug on the market that you can get for like $8 a dose that has been shown in certain cases to be effective.
To work.
Yes, as a not only prophylaxis or preventative treatment, but also as a reactive treatment once you get COVID. So as opposed to promoting the use of their super cheap drug that's been on the market for a long time that they have generics for, somebody in chat pointed out that you can get generics for this. They want to instead incentivize the deployment of their new drug, which already has a contract on deck ready to be signed by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for 1.7 million doses. 1.7 million doses.
I wonder how much each dose is,
well,
how much each one costs.
That's exactly what I was going to ask next, and I think we get a little evidence here. It says, through the agreement, if Molnupiravir receives an EUA, emergency use authorization, or approval by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, Merck will receive approximately $1.2 billion to supply approximately 1.7 million courses of Molnupiravir to the United States government. So there you go. They get 1.2 billion. And they also say Merck has been investing at risk to support development and scale up production of Molnupiravir and expects to have more than 10 million courses of therapy available by the end of 2021. So they're starting out with 1.7 million, but they're going to go up to 10 million by the end of 2021 if it gets approved.
Yeah, and of course they're going to push the stuff that like they've invested and it's a high risk investment. Of course they're going to want to put money into that or push people towards that because there's no money to be made in the course of treatment that's $8 as opposed to this that's going to be worth 1.2 billion or more depending on however many doses they sell. So of course they're going to be like no, don't use the cheap shit. Use the expensive new brand spanking new iPhone 13 as opposed to the as opposed to the iPhone 5 that is tried and true and works great.
No, it's funny that you mentioned the iPhone as an example because I was thinking about this and what does the future of pharmaceuticals look like? Are they going to like kind of have programmed obsolescence in this the same way that in the past, they made light bulbs to only work for 3,000 hours or whatever. Is this a start of because this is not a long-term monetizable thing for these companies. Once the drug has been out for a certain amount of time, the intellectual property gets released. It becomes generic. Then you can get it for $8 a pop as opposed to $100 a pop or whatever it is they're trying to charge for this one. Or in the case of remdesivir, it's like thousands. Obviously you have a duty to your shareholders to make the most amount of profit. Of course you're going to go for something like this. They are, again, I'm not applying any kind of malice or malintent to these companies. They're literally reacting to the incentives in the way that the incentive structure is built for them. They have to, by the laws of the incentives, which is the laws of the universe, they have to do this. This is the intended outcome of our system that we have set up. So I mean, as bad as it is, this is what do you expect? What do you expect?
Yeah, it's the same thing that happened with HCQ, because I don't want to say the full name of it because we'll get banned again. But, HCQ has been around for like 50 years and has been used to treat malaria and all kinds of stuff. And people have been taking it to be preventative for the COOF. And there have been doctors that have been saying, like, let's use this. This is cheap. It's effective. Like, why don't we use this? And guess what? Those doctors get banned. They get shunned. It's hard to get a prescription for HCQ. And then if you even dare mention it to people, they're like, oh my God, that's a terrible drug that hurts people, even though it's been around for 50 years and has been used to treat many different kinds of flus and flu variants and malaria and all kinds of different stuff. But because it's not profitable, because the HCQ patent has been out for a while and these drug companies won't make money off of HCQ, what do they want to push? They want to push, what was that one you said, Remdesivir or whatever? Remdesivir and this new one. They want to push this crap because it's brand spanking new. They know people will pay out of pocket. The insurance companies will pay out of pocket for this crap, and they're gonna make a profit. There's no profit to be made with these tried and true courses of treatments for flus and different kinds of variants of flus and colds and all kinds of stuff.
So you could say at one aspect, yes, this is the incentive structure that's built, and this is what you would expect the companies to do. However, to kind of counter my own point that I just made, you have to look at the relationship between these companies and the government. That is where the real pressure point is that needs attention in this particular case, because why is there already a deal ready to be signed on the desk of the Food and Drug Administration for this when the article even states that it hasn't even finished phase 3 clinical trials yet? How is that even possible? That there could be a deal lined up for a drug that isn't even past trials yet? That's what you have to really ask. We could just rail on the fact that capitalism has set up the structure where they're gonna be incentivized to get shareholder profit every time, but there is a little bit of crony capitalism involved in this particular case, I would say, in the relationship between these companies and the government. So I'm not.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, capitalism does deserve criticism from time to time, but in this particular case, this I don't think is capitalism. This is crony capitalism, and that is perfectly,
this is cronyism for sure.
This is perfectly open for criticism at any point in time, because crony capitalism is not capitalism, and this is your weekly reminder that America does not operate under a capitalistic free market. It is in a lot of cases like this, it's more of a fascist mixed market where we have government and direct control over our markets with stuff like this. So Phil C in YouTube chat says, make people afraid enough of something they will be willing to pay anything to put an end to it.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. We pump enough fear, you can get people to do whatever you want. Like we talked about earlier in the stream, all you got to do is keep people in a state of mental plasticity, anxiety, fear, weakness, and you can get them to do whatever you want, man. This is why now we're going to see, and I was talking about this with my friends today, we're going to start to see people who refuse to take off the masks, despite the fact that they're vaccinated and that all the evidence shows that it's nearly impossible to get the COVID while you're outside with a mask on. I mean, just when you're outside alone, it's almost impossible to get it. But when you're outside with the mask on, there's really no reason to be wearing a mask outside. But we're going to see people persist because they're stuck. Some people, hey, calm down back there. Some people are so deep in the mental illness that they will not be able to recover. And we're going to start to see that.
Shut up, dog.
Let's see. Dari says people between 12 and 24 developing inflammation around the heart post-virus shot is the latest thing going around. Yeah, actually, Dari, I was going to talk about that article. I found that there was a study that showed that they're investigating cases of heart inflammation after the vaccine has been administered. So that's interesting. Again, remember that the vaccine didn't go through testing. It's emergency youth authorization, so you are the test if you take it.
Yep. That's why I say no thank you.
Let's see. Phil C. also said, I saw a doctor go before Congress, and he was pleading with them to emergency enact the I word. He had a 100% success rate with his patients and this drug. Yeah, that is the doctor that Brett Weinstein interviewed for like 3 hours straight. So he talked directly to the guy who was administering this drug on the front lines and had massive success with it. And he did go before Congress. He did try to argue for that, and it was completely stomped out. And he was ridiculed and chased out of society for that as a result. Because we love
crazy
science.
You're crazy if you promote anything else besides the vaccine, because the vaccine will save all of us.
John Lovin says, I use the I word for goats. It's great. I would use it before the jab. There you go. And a lot of people, ironically, were actually going to Amazon and getting the veterinary version of the I word because it is openly available as a pet dewormer or D.
That's
parasitic
hilarious.
on Amazon. So yeah. Let's see. Left are like your alcoholic crazy uncle that hit the lottery. Yeah, sometimes. Did we get a stereo chat on that one? No stereo chats. So I'm gonna move on.
We did get I was gonna say we did get a super chat from Steve Husted.
That's right.
He said, "With great sadness, rest in peace, Randall Mario Pofo. You will be missed. Snap into it." You know who that is, right?
Oh no, is that Macho Man?
Yes, it is. You're
Oh
correct.
no, yeah, rest in peace, Macho Man.
R.I.P. Man.
You want? I'll do my in honor of the $5 super chat. I'll do my best Macho Man Randy Savage impression right now. Are you ready?
Let's do this.
All right. You are like a grain of sand in the Sahara Desert. Yeah, and I'm like the entire desert.
I love it. That was awesome.
This is my Macho Man impression.
You should be an actor, Jeremy.
I just got to get the once I get the sunglasses, I'll be set. Our final story of the night is directly related to the COVID stuff, and we're going to wrap it up on a very interesting topic here with a new study that shows that there is no point in vaccinating people who have already had COVID-19 because you got that natural immunity.
Dun.
Let's see here. Switching over to the browser. This is from News Medical Life Sciences, news-medical.net. Sounds pretty reputable. It's got science in the title of the website, so you know it can't be wrong.
And it's .net, so you know it's not just some just corporation owning it.
Yeah, that is this is dead
I'm
serious.
I'm just kidding.
So, scientists from the Cleveland Clinic USA have recently evaluated the effectiveness of the coronavirus disease and vaccination among individuals with or without a history of severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus infection. Study findings revealed that individuals with previous SARS-CoV-2 infection do not get additional benefits from vaccination, indicating that COVID-19 vaccines should be prioritized to individuals without prior infection. Uh-oh. We got a narrative problem here. The study is currently available on the MedRx IV preprint server, whatever that is. But anyway, this is the problem with setting the cart before the horse, making... thinking past the sale, setting up all these moral traps that they do to try and imply that, oh, you're vaccine hesitant, you're not going to get the vaccine. Well, that means if you don't get the vaccine for any reason, then we identify you as an enemy of the opposite faction, things like that. Because as time goes on, as science gets done, guess what? You get results like this, where we now know, and this was a question that was in the air for a long time. What happens with you when you get coronavirus? Do you have to get the vaccine? There's actually a lot of question and suspicion that getting the vaccine after you've had coronavirus could be potentially harmful to you. So now we know with this study that you got a citation that you can provide to people who try to argue against you. If you try to say, I've already had COVID, because if you're like me, I've already had it like 8 times. I've got so many antibodies that the vaccine would actually... It wouldn't even have an effect on me, probably, to be honest. I'm only half joking, but I've had it, and I probably have that natural immunity, so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I probably just have that natural immunity because I'm a mudblood, so, anything that comes my way, I can fight it off.
But see, you need a study to display that before you have any actual... value behind that statement.
True.
Because anything today,
unfortunately, just my anecdotal story is just not enough for some people.
As we talked about on Tuesday's stream, unless you have a study that's randomized controlled trials to show that you have an outcome that you're trying to advocate for, then everything you're saying is meaningless. Anything in life that does not have a randomized controlled study behind it is basically 100% meaningless, according to these people who proclaim to be so science loving. Anyway, but now they've got a little bit of a backfire with this situation. So, Moneypenny in the YouTube chat says she's literally taking my dog's deworming tablets. Only way to get it in the UK. See, there you go. Let's see. So pre-existing factors are now being pushed to the back of the line. Sounds familiar. Yeah, well, pre-existing factors. Okay, I could see where you're going with that one. That's actually a good point. There was never any regard for pre-existing conditions, especially considering, obesity and things like that with the vaccine. But now we have reason to bring attention back to those. Let's see.
Now I can safely say, like, I'll happily give my vaccine up for grandma because I've already had it, so I'm good.
And you have a scientific justification for saying that. So
Yep.
throw this right in their faces. Use it at every opportunity you can. I know I will. I'll have a great time doing it. If anybody asks me again while I'm out in public, are you vaccinated? Instead of just lying and saying no, I could say, I don't need it because I had the real thing.
I got the real deal, and I identify as vaccinated, so you can't question me, bigot.
Just to give a little background on this, continuing off the article, it says, in the United States, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has provided emergency use authorization for 2 mRNA-based COVID-19 vaccines developed by Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna, which have shown high efficacy against SARS-CoV-2 infection and COVID-19 disease in clinical trials. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice here as we approach the 2-hour mark. Oh, we're beyond the 2-hour mark.
Yeah, we're past it, man.
However, the ability to vaccinate a large part of the global population is limited by vaccine supply. Well, see, now the narrative gets turned against him because, exactly like you said, Delaney, I want to give up my vaccine dose to somebody who really needs it. Give it to somebody who's over 65. Give it to somebody who's over 65 BMI. That's funny, actually. Over 65 applies in both cases, whether it's your age or your BMI. They say, in order to ensure fair access to vaccines throughout the world, the COVID-19 Vaccines Global Access Initiative was launched. I never heard of this before, but it's called COVAX for short. In many countries, especially those with low socioeconomic status, there is a serious shortage of vaccines. Thus, in order to get the maximum vaccine benefits, the most vulnerable population should be prioritized for the vaccination. Now tell me, how can you argue against that point? Now with the study, we can say, without being tongue-in-cheek, without being, directly confrontational, we could just say, look, this isn't the best deployment strategy for the vaccine. There are more vulnerable populations. I'll even admit that I'm vulnerable to COVID. I won't have to go as far as saying I'm 100% immune. I'll simply say, look, I'm not the most vulnerable population. I want to use my vaccine to give it to somebody who's more vulnerable. And how can anybody argue against that?
Right? Give it to a poor person. Give it to grandma. Like, I'd rather it go to them than to go to me, honestly. I mean, I'm poor, but I'm not willing to be a science experiment. But if grandma wants to be a science experiment, let her. That's fine. Cool.
Let's get into a couple numbers on the study here. Let's see. The study was conducted on 52,000 employees in the Cleveland Clinic. That's a large number. Good sample size. I like it. I like the sample size. Yep. A positive PT-PCR test was considered to define SARS-CoV-2 infection. So now we've defined what it means to be positive. It's a positive PCR test. The participants received 2 doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech or Moderna COVID-19 vaccine at an interval of 28 days. A participant was considered vaccinated after 14 days of receiving a second vaccine dose. Everything looks good here so far. This is all kosher. It does take time for you to be considered fully vaccinated. They took that into account, so you can't claim they try to fudge the numbers. Similarly, a participant who tested positive for SARS-CoV-2 at least 42 days before the vaccination initiation was considered previously infected. So that's the window of time before the vaccination to be considered previously infected. Of all enrolled participants, 5% had previous SARS-CoV-2 infection, compared to 59% of non-infected participants. Only 47% of previously infected participants were vaccinated by the end of the study. About 63% of all vaccinated participants received the Moderna vaccine. The analysis of the cumulative COVID-19 incidents revealed that during the course of the study, SARS-CoV-2 infection occurred almost exclusively in participants who were not previously infected and were not vaccinated. So the only real significant reoccurrence happened to people who weren't previously infected or were not vaccinated. Interestingly, no significant difference in COVID-19 incidence was observed between the previously infected and currently unvaccinated participants, previously infected and currently vaccinated participants, and previously uninfected and currently vaccinated participants. That is, I apologize for that sentence. I didn't know that was coming. That is incredibly difficult to understand. But
right.
Let me see if I can interpret that. No significant difference between previously infected and currently unvaccinated, previously infected and currently vaccinated, previously uninfected and currently vaccinated participants. Okay, so I think the key part out of that is that there was no difference between previously infected and currently vaccinated participants. No significant difference between previously infected and currently vaccinated. That's the key part out of that right there. The participants from these three groups exhibited a significantly lower incidence of SARS-CoV-2 infection compared to previously uninfected and currently unvaccinated. So, there you go. I mean, if you want to read the full study at news-medical.net, it is openly available. You know, at the Weekly Narrative here, we love to cite studies and science directly. We're not just making this stuff up. So, the evidence appears to show that having an infection previously was enough, and you do not need the vaccine at that point.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that what I've been saying all along is finally like kind of being said by the mainstream, because I've been saying this to people all along and they're still trying to like convince me to go take the vaccine. And it's like, no, I don't, I'm good. I don't need to. Like I'll be fine. I'll survive without it. Like if you want to do it, cool, but don't force me. That's my biggest problem with this whole thing is stop trying to force people to take something that's experimental.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Phil mentions in chat that he read an article that the jab can possibly cause people with diseases such as dementia, Parkinson's, etc. to rapidly deteriorate. But it's just too early to tell. And Moneypenny backs him up on that one. It's a case where it's really just risk management, right? Like if we know the numbers, we know what the death rates are for people our age who are not obese. We compare that to the unknown risk that comes with the vaccine and the anecdotal stories that come along with that, where we hear people talking about. There was somebody on Brett Weinstein's podcast who mentioned he had someone he knew had a heart attack like 2 minutes after he got the vaccine. We have stories from our chat directly, where we've got I forgot who it was, but he was mentioning how he had like kidney failure after getting the vaccine.
It was a defrailed Jew on Tuesday night.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So, and you know, if there was a low risk of that kind of stuff happening, you wouldn't expect to see occurrences that happen. Like I've heard more cases of people close to me, maybe just 1 or 2 degrees of separation, that have had bad reactions to the vaccine than I have heard of stories of people having serious cases of COVID. So. You know, unfortunately, because there is no actual long-term data, there's no randomized controlled studies for the vaccines, we have to rely partially on that anecdotal information. So, it's not looking good. But, as Moneypenny points out in chat, it's actually the spike protein toxicity and dysregulation. That's what they're starting to see now with the vaccine, is that it's actually, which is what the vaccine operates off of. It's a spike protein. It's the spike protein itself that causes a lot of the problems. So, not necessarily what the spike protein is inducing. So, yeah, it's... Osa says, don't worry about it. You see Biden. My dad was 81, way past his prime. Biden is tip-top, as you could tell from his like G7 video where he was like lost. Did you see that video where Biden was lost?
Oh, yes.
Oh, my God. Leader of the free world there, people.
Oh, my God.
Good stuff.
Leader of
good
the free
stuff.
world, calling it a day at 9 a.m.
That's the show for today, guys. Keeping you up to date on the latest and greatest science studies and polls, information that you need to know.
Yep, and like letting you know about the indoctrination happening on your children as well.
Yeah, a little bit of that built in there too. But we are a direct source for the science. No BS. We didn't get to all the studies, but we know what. The ones that I wanted to cover weren't as significant. We'll save them for next time. If you guys like the stream, if you like the discussion, you like talking about controversial things, thinking out loud, all that kind of stuff, feel free to subscribe, give us a like, follow the show on stereo, and you'll find us here every Tuesday and Saturday, 7 p.m. PST. We have been going for several dozen podcasts in a row now. We're approaching 70. Good job, Delaney. Approaching 70 streams. It's pretty good. Pretty good. That's 35 weeks. 35 weeks.
Jesus, man.
Yep. And that's all we got.
All right. Yeah. Let's wrap it up.
Okay, guys, we'll see you next time on Tuesday. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for the super chat.
Yep. Love
And,
all y'all. Have a good night.
Yep, that's it. Bye, folks. Have a good one. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Bye. Bye now.